Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished professional from the UK, Mr. Jax Davey. Jax, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Jax is the founder and chief executive officer of Nuevo. He's a former Royal Marine Commando, and he was recognized and honored as a Forbes 30 under 30. So, Jax, before we talk about sustainable advertising, tell me about your journey and what led to the founding of Nuevo and your focus on sustainability in advertising.
Yeah, so I had quite a strange entrance really into the advertising world. Around 17 years old, I joined the Marines, went through training, ended up doing 5 years of Royal Marines Commando, flying around the world, spending time in deserts on ships, jumping out of helicopters. It was a good time. And then when I got to my last unit, I picked up a camera during a surveillance course and just got hooked, became obsessed with it, and
Mm,
started shooting loads of photography for outdoor brands, spending a lot of time in the mountains, in the woods, beaches, deserts, wherever we could go to shoot things really. And started doing work for bigger brands like Garmin, for example.
mm,
So it was at that point I decided I was going to leave the Royal Marines and set up my first agency.
mhm,
The first agency was really structured around ex-Royal Marine Commandos
mm,
getting to remote, hard places in the mountains to shoot great content for outdoor brands.
mm,
And we did that really well, to the point where we got a lot of the military contracts and a lot of the outdoor brand contracts. And I got approached by Berkshire Hathaway and ended up selling the agency into Berkshire Hathaway.
mhm,
Worked with them for 2 years, developing technology to sell back into the military. We looked at virtual reality mission planning platforms
mm,
and stress inoculation chambers. It was super interesting. But I wanted to get back into the creative space again and behind a camera,
mm,
create adverts, really. So I thought, what can I do back in that space? But I still wanted the same purpose I had when I was selling technology into the military, that it could save lives.
mm,
And at that point, this is now 3, 4 years ago, we were on a big production, 50, 60 people. And we noticed the creative director pulling things out of the scene for the behind the scenes
mm,
photos. And when we asked why, she turned around and said, look, I just want to make it look more sustainable. And we looked behind us and we saw these big generators, these big floodlights, big four by
mm,
four. And we said, actually, we can reduce that. We can do something about it. She was like, you can't. We need that to run the production. And that was the first time we kind of thought, actually, there's a space here in the market to make a real difference.
amazing.
We could take military planning and our experience, and we could take that to productions and lower the carbon footprint. And that was the start, really, of New Evo's journey 3 years ago.
Amazing. What an amazing story. Thank you for sharing this. And Jax, tell me, when I was reading and preparing for this conversation, it was fascinating to see that, uh, you have a way to be able to uh, talk about traditional advertising leading to overconsumption and climate change. Help
Yeah.
me understand this perspective.
I think the advertising world's just got stuck in a bit of a rut where it's all about numbers and about selling as much as we can,
Mm,
whatever the product is. And it's driven this mass kind of overconsumption or selling fast fashion, for
mm,
example. And the advertising industry has been quite blind really to the fact that we we are helping fuel that, right?
mm,
We're making people buy things time and time again. And it's kind of I think it's time we take a little step back, a little breathe and go, actually,
mm,
work we're doing is really fueling overconsumption and not helping us get to where we want to be. So that was our kind of understanding of it. And that's when we started in production. We actually then started going upstream and said, actually, we need strategists, we need brand strategists, we need creatives. So we can actually help form the brief of these brands and say,
mm,
actually, you've got power and influence, you've got multiple hundreds of millions of followers across all your platforms. Like,
mm.
why can't we use that to be a positive influence and change behaviors a better way rather than just getting to people to consume, to consume, to consume
Right.
new products all the time?
Amazing, amazing. And can you give me an example of a campaign that you have run which has successfully balanced commercial and sustainability goals?
Yeah, so there's a few big ones that are about to come out over the next couple of months that we're working on at the moment.
Mm,
But some of the ones we did last year, for example, with Canada Goose, part of their Human Nature program, which is
mm,
about keeping the planet cold and everyone on it warm.
mm,
We did a Live in the Open series where we put the products and the jackets on real, authentic people that spend a lot of their time living outdoors.
Mm,
So one of the examples we used was an incredible woman that lived off the coast of Cornwall, and she would free dive a lot of the time, and she was there protecting and raising money for the seals charities all around the islands there and
mm,
protecting the corals. And we actually used her as one of the talent. So by
wow.
selling the product and seeing the
Mm,
product in the shots, you're actually promoting sustainable behaviors about getting out there and protecting the lands we have. So
mm,
that was one of the examples we could use. Ordnance Survey, we work with them. We're kind of a partner that helps them with their strategy. Um, and one of their things was a more sustainable place was one of the pillars we really brought into their marketing. And
mm,
that was actually one of the most engaged with marketing kind of push they did through last year. So it
mm.
showed that people or consumers really want to hear about it and understand what a brand's actually doing about it.
Amazing. So you just a few minutes back told me about this story of how you were able to remove a lot of the generators and these big lights. Jax, what are some of the misconceptions about sustainability in advertising?
So at the moment, we really find that sustainability within advertising is just parked over with one sustainability manager, right?
Mm,
And then you have the CMO and the brand teams and everything just firing on all cylinders, running how they normally run into things.
mm,
We need to see that integrated. We need to understand that sustainability messaging can come through everything you do, so it looks more joined up, and it's not just this boring monotone voice that has to sit there or just be a white paper that's stuck to the back of a
right,
website. We
right.
have an opportunity here to really bring it into everything you do within a marketing department. And everyone thinks it's going to cost more, but it doesn't. Like our approach to it is talking about we attack the inefficiencies in the industry. So
Mm,
we look at the wastage in all the processes we do in the marketing world. And it's just something that's been there and built into the industry because
mm,
the more line items you have, the more you can charge, right? So everyone's trying to get as many people into as many different places for as many days on set. And we're kind of undoing that and saying, actually, we don't need that. We need a lean team. We need a task force kind of specialist at the right time in the right space. We need to speed up the process. We need to have better planning, which means less time on sets, for example.
mm,
We need to start reusing the stock imagery that brands have shot over the years and reimagining how we do things. And if we make some of those changes, then sustainability within advertising isn't an additional added a headache that's going to be there or extra cost. It's
mm,
actually save a brand money, time, and resources.
mm. And the Gen Z consumers are now becoming very conscious about asking for sustainability. So my
Yeah.
question is, what are some of the challenges brands are facing to be able to bring in sustainability into their communication?
Well, I think because the consumers now are getting so on the front foot and asking the right questions in the right
Right.
places about kind of what you're doing about sustainability, it's
Mm,
almost created brands to freeze.
mm,
And there's ones that don't want a green kind of greenwash or green hush. So they're just frozen in this kind of middle land of going, I don't know how to communicate sustainability.
mm,
But it's so important that they do. So I think the consumer pressure has led to brands doing less. Um, publicly, but they're doing more behind the scenes to try and clean up their supply chains and everything. So we're there
mm,
to really say, actually, you're missing a trick here. Like
mm,
sustainability to really work, you need to find a way to commercialize it and make money off the back of it, right? Because that's how we're really going to get every brand to listen to what we're saying.
mm,
So we talk a lot about how you can communicate it authentically, how you can do it with humbly, and you can do it in the right way, and that will actually build proper consumer trust.
amazing.
And that's kind of one of our jobs. And I know you kind of mentioned you want to talk around the comms check we do, and that kind of a lot of the work we do is around that comms check, helping brands be confident in the way they're talking about sustainability within their business. And it's not about having it all worked out and have it all polished and correct
Mm,
100%. It's
mm,
about the journey you're on and making sure you're being honest about that journey and communicating it as the different milestones so people feel like they're on that journey with you.
mm. Very interesting. You also have this very interesting phrase called conscious creativity. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about this and how does it guide your work at Nuevo?
So about 3 years ago when we started, it was more in the production space, and we got into a very good place of progressive production. It was a set of guidelines and frameworks that we
Mm,
used to make sure we never went on recce's, for example. It all had to be done in virtual. So straight away, we're lowering the carbon footprint then and the amount of resource and time spent and the money, right? We saved a
mm,
lot of budget for clients by doing it like that. So when we started the creative department around a year and a half ago, they were tasked straight away with coming up with a 10-point framework called conscious
Mm.
creativity. And it was just a framework for any brief we picked up in the creative space, we would stick to. And we're actually launching a series of webinars to talk about it in every different pillar over the next couple of weeks. But some of it is like starting with the end in mind, about varying the tone, because sustainability is starting to fall on deaf ears, right? People don't like the doom and gloom. People don't like the end of the world comments.
Mm.
People are starting just to kind of switch off because they don't know how they can make a difference to that, right? So they ignore it. So we talk a lot about how do you vary the tone? How do you make
Mm.
sustainability turn up in different ways? And it can, sometimes you can use comedy if it's the right forum for it.
Right.
Sometimes you can use a little lighthearted humor, like whatever it is, but it just needs to connect to a wider group of people to educate them. Like, for example, we kind of highlighted Inspire's a new pillar we're launching this year.
Mm.
And we thought, okay, how do we use culturally relevant things that are going on or things that are grabbing people's attention and lean into that? Ultra running's one of the
Mm.
quickest growing sports in the world. So
Mm.
we decided I've entered a 230-kilometer Arctic run across the
Wow.
Arctic Circle at -40 that we're stepping off in 3.5 weeks to do. So it will take me 5 days, and we're creating a documentary about it. And we're going to use that as a platform to educate the followers from that on climate change and the solutions out there. So it's
Amazing.
how do you lean in and create these kind of messages in different worlds where people aren't really talking about it yet, but people do care about it. Like the ultra running community spend all their time outdoors. They love the mountains. They love
Mm.
nature. Of course, they want to protect it, but they just don't have the tools or the solutions yet to know what they can do about it. So it's how do we connect those dots? And advertising can do that because we're trained to think of how we can get people to change their behaviors and buy a certain product or act in a certain way or move to a different school or house or location. So it's how do we use that skill set to say, right, we're going to make everyone act in a better way now by the way we inspire them to change the way they do things.
How amazing. And are you going to be doing this 230-kilometer run also, or wow?
Yeah, it's me. So it's me. They're
Oh, you are
making a
going to be
film.
running. Okay.
Me, yeah. So I have to carry all my food on my back, my med kits, everything, all my different layers. And then we start, and it's 230 kilometers across kind of frozen lakes, ice
Well,
mountains. And
once you
yeah,
finished it, I'd love to have a conversation with you on how you prepare for that run because and
yeah,
what were
sure.
your experiences. I'd love to do that with maybe some photographs or images of your run, but
Yeah,
I'd love to do that. But coming
yeah.
back and we briefly talked about the new Evo Comes check.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the new Evo Comes check and its importance in sustainable marketing? And if possible, give me an example.
Yeah, so the comms check really came from a demand from our clients. We were doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, clearing
Mhm.
up how they got to the end product within their marketing departments. And then
Right.
they were turning around going, how do we talk about that?
Mm.
Like we don't want to overclaim, or we don't want to underclaim, or we don't want to make it look like it's not authentic. And it was, we went, okay, there's a bit of work to do here. And we found that time and time again. So we actually sat around and said, right, let's create something to help these brands and how they communicate sustainability. So the comms check really is looking at a business, and we really dive into the details of what are you actually doing around sustainability.
Mm.
And then we pull out what we call like the golden nuggets or the threads of like, this is exactly what you should be speaking about because this is going
Mm.
to drive consumer trust. So then it's going back to them with a whole comms plan of over the next year, this is what we can talk about. And if we push it and we get this, and this done, then we can add these in and these headlines and
Mm.
these. So it excites them about sustainability journey. And what it does is actually speed up the brands want and
Mm.
drive to get to the end quicker. So
Mm.
yeah, it's super interesting and it's something
How
that's just
exciting. Yeah.
took off last year. And yeah, an example of that is we were launching a shoe brand into US, a Brazilian shoe brand. The regulations around what you can say around sustainability is completely different country by
Mm.
country, right? So we had to look at the US and go, what do the consumers want? What language do they know around sustainability? And what do they expect? What's the levels of, because one country will think of a sustainable brand as a completely different level of criteria to
Mm.
another one, right? So it's kind of how do we land this in the US and make it feel authentic and still have the same credibility it has in Brazil? So we did a lot of work around the comms around that. So we like getting involved in their projects because they're a
Amazing.
lot of thinking of how we make it land and connect.
Fascinating. But therefore, a logical next question for you is that how do you balance creativity with the need to convey a serious message about sustainability?
Yeah, so we always see our work as very serious. Like this needs to happen, and we need to inspire as many creators as possible to follow suit and say, look,
Mm.
we need to use our skill sets for the greater good.
Mm.
How we then deliver that message doesn't have to be serious. that's when we need to get creative. And that's why I think the creatives have the power to make a big change here, right? Because
Mm,
when we would do a lot of work with universities and you read their reports and they're incredible, and the amount of data and science and everything that's gone into it is insane. But
mm,
that's probably only connecting with the top 5% that really want to learn and understand it and have
mm,
that time to read an hour or two of
right.
papers, right? How do
Mm,
we connect with the 90%, 95% of people that don't have that time, that
mm,
don't have that deep interest in it, but how we could get across a simple message to change their behavior in a
mm,
30-second film? So that's where I think we need help to take that incredible science and data and lessons that we're understanding, and
mm,
how do we make that show up in everyday life? And the only thing that shows up in everyday life is advertising.
mm.
Everyone gets sold to every minute of every day. So it's
Right.
how do we weave sustainable behaviors into there? And it doesn't have to be mass, complicated, big strategic pieces. It
Mm,
can literally be, right, when you show how many films out there show someone flying business class on a flight to
mm,
show a successful businessman, right?
mm,
We'll put them in a car sharing, get them cycling to work, like just change a
mm.
few behaviors like that. And if millions of people see it, it might make the people think, actually, I could cycle to work, or why don't I share?
Yeah,
And it's just those kind of things we can start weaving in that are going to start over time changing the way people do.
very interesting. And Jax, what steps do you believe the advertising industry should take to become a force for good?
I think the first thing we need to do is educate.
Mm,
So I think creatives need to understand and marketers need to understand the power they really do have to change things. And
mm,
then they should all start to educate themselves on what is the problem out there and how
mm,
can we be part of the solution. As soon as they start doing that, as soon as we
mm,
started doing that, we almost became obsessed of, wow, we can really make a difference here.
mm,
And then as soon as you've kind of ignited that and then kind of got them on that journey, it's really easy then to say, right, let's
mm,
collaborate here, let's do this here. And you can see potentials everywhere. It's just unlocking that first step where people understand how they can actually have a positive impact here.
mm.
And then I think the rest will just build momentum from there.
And what role do you see consumers play in driving the industry towards more sustainable practices?
Well, I think consumers are the ones to thank for the change that's even coming now, because
Mm,
they're calling out supply chains a lot of the time, and marketing should really become part of that supply chain, right? Because
mm,
you're dealing with third-party suppliers in agencies and creative agencies. So when you're challenging supply chains of these brands that you support and love, ask them about the creative.
mm,
That's when you need to say, oh, how did you shoot that campaign? What did you do? Did you employ local people?
mm,
Where did you get all your food from? What did you do with the wastage? How efficient was it? Did you
mm.
reuse your stock stuff that you shot last year? It's just these simple questions that
Right.
once they keep landing in the right place, people start thinking about it. And then it allows them to sit down with the agency partner and say, right, one of the KPIs on this isn't just our return on investment, how many items we want to sell, but what is the positive thing that's going to come off it?
Mm,
What can we inspire? What good action can we inspire here?
right.
And then when people start bringing that into the very first brief when they're
Mm,
working on a campaign,
mm,
that's when we're going to see a mass change.
mm. Amazing. So, Jax, I have time for three more questions. My next question is that, and a lot of our viewers and listeners are small businesses, aspiring entrepreneurs. How can small businesses participate in sustainable advertising with limited resources?
So the first thing any small business can do is start tracking and monitoring what they do from a marketing point of view.
Hmm,
And then you can actually start making better decisions. So for example, it could be like, right, if we're a small business and we're gonna fly over here for our one shoot we do a year with 4 people in the crew. Okay, are
hmm,
we going to fly 4 people over there, or are we actually going to use local people in that area? Do we need to fly there?
hmm,
What are we going to shoot it on? How can we make that content last longer? And
hmm,
actually, by having that kind of thinking very early on in the business, over the years, it will save them a lot of money because they'll make
hmm,
smart decisions. Okay, so that's a way people can start straight away. The other thing is educate themselves ready for when they do get bigger and they have bigger budgets. They
hmm.
already know about what's out there and what they can achieve within their
Right.
marketing. So
Hmm,
the good way to kind of educate is AdGreen, for example, have a great tool calculator where you can start calculating your emissions of your the carbon footprint of your production straight away. So
hmm.
that's a good to jump on straight away.
Fascinating.
That's free to use, and any business can jump on that and start monitoring and tracking the carbon footprint of how they create.
Amazing.
Um,
Amazing. My next question is, what personal practices do you follow to lead a more sustainable lifestyle?
I think as we're learning more and more about it, things are always tweaking and changing. For the last year and a half, I've had electric car. I look at clean energy coming into the house. We try and walk a lot more places or cycle a lot more places than we do before. What food do we consume? Where do we buy things from? I look at kind of a lot more longevity in the clothing I wear now. Rather like you look at Patagonias, they have incredible things where you can send them
Mm,
back and they get fixed and they come back to you rather than kind of buying a new jacket every season. So it's kind
mm,
of smaller changes like that. And then I guess the biggest focus for me is the work we do to make sure, go, how do we balance growing a successful agency? Because you need more incredible minds to do better work, with the fact that we're always trying to do as much good as we possibly can in the world. But I think actually the other thing to note for small businesses is if you pick a vision and a mission as big as what we have to could change the entire industry, that is actually an incredible recruitment tool. We've
mm.
got some of the best creatives have come in-house. We're only kind of 15, 20 people, but we have
Right.
some of the best creatives of 150 creative awards. We have
Amazing.
some of the best brand strategists. We have some of the producers from the BBC and things. So we've got the best people, and they haven't come because we're the biggest or the best paying. They've become part of us because they think actually that mission is huge and it's something I want to be part of. And we want to be known as the progressive trailblazers that are going to change an entire industry and create a new blueprint.
Mhm.
So it's like
Fascinating.
having a big mission and having something where you want to change something and not being scared of going after it, actually helps in all areas of your business.
And on that note, Jax, thank you so much for speaking to me. This has been such an amazing conversation about New Evo, about your own journey. I've learned many, many new things from you about sustainable advertising today, and I would certainly pass on the good word to all my advertising friends who are there.
Thank you.
Uh, all the very best for your run. I hope we can follow it somewhere. I'm sure, with your kind of talent in terms of communication, there will be some kind of an availability of how to follow Jax running 230
Yeah.
kilometers in such intense cold. But good luck with your
Yeah.
run. Thank you for speaking to me and all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.